Well, hello there and welcome to the Richie Allen television show in association with davidike.com and beyondvision.tv. I hope you're well. This programme is for the week ending is the 26th of February 2016. It's lovely to have your company. Thanks for watching the programme. This will be the penultimate episode of Series 2, meaning, if you don't understand what penultimate means, is that next week we'll have the final episode of Season 2 and then we'll have a very short couple of weeks off while we put together Season 3. Very exciting, and I'm thrilled that all the gang at BVTV want to keep making this programme. The Beyond Vision Charitable Foundation is fantastic. Google it or use Yahoo or some other search engine and read all about it. It's a terrific enterprise here in Manchester. I'm delighted they want to continue with this programme. Thanks to Hayden Hewitt and all the gang here. Today is an interesting day in the country of my birth, the Republic of Ireland, because the Irish go to the polls. It's a general election day today. Weeks and weeks of campaigning culminate in the vote today. There you can see, I don't know which paper that is that Hayden is throwing up there. It's the Telegraph, thanks Hayden. The Telegraph newspaper, and on there you can see Enda Kenny. He's the current Taoiseach, the incumbent, and the leader of Fine Gael. I just want to say this, and I want to say no more about it. I want to say all the very best today to Ben Gilroy, to Richard Boyd Barrett and to Claire Daly. Everybody associated with Directive and Democracy Ireland and everybody associated with independent candidates. I'm not going to be a hypocrite. I haven't voted in an election since the late 1990s. I don't ever again plan on voting in any general election anywhere, even though I will vote in the forthcoming European Union referendum here in England, although I'm not sure it'll make any difference, but I will vote in it. I don't believe in representative democracy. I don't believe in the electoral process. I fear that despite the wonderful men and women, people like Claire Daly and Ben Gilroy and Richard Boyd Barrett, I fear we are condemned to more of the same in Ireland. The system itself is arcane, it's broke, it's despicably corrupt, it's filthy. I can come up with any number of adjectives to describe it. It ain't the way forward for people. Non-violent civil disobedience on a mass level is. But again, these are good people. I hope they have good outcomes today. Well. There's only one place to start, really, and that's with the Savile report, which, of course, was commissioned by the BBC a couple of years ago and was headed up by a woman called Dame Janet Smith. It cost over $6 million. As I said, it's taken over 2 years to compile. It's been described today as a massive whitewash by the establishment in the guise, this time, of the BBC. And I think, Hayden, we've got The Guardian there. I'm getting better at using these devices. National press rounds on the BBC calling Savile report a whitewash. There's a terrific article by Roy Greenslade in The Guardian newspaper today. Go to theguardian.com if you want to read it. He says newspaper editors, whether favourable or not to the corporation, could hardly react otherwise. The catalogue of predation was all the more shocking for the sober way it was recorded in the judge's reports. He goes on to describe what the Daily Mail has had to say about it, what the Mirror, what the Metro, the front page of the Metro today. You know the Metro, it's a free paper. You pick it up at the bus stations, you pick it up on the tube, you pick it up on the underground. The Metro's front page even said £6.5 million Savile whitewash. Several other editorials took a similar line. The Times believed it was an inescapable conclusion, saying that the BBC was not merely in thrall to its most odious and abusive presenter, but too big to care about its victims. I want you to hear from Dame Janet Smith. She obviously addressed the media yesterday when she handed over the bulky report. This is Dame Janet Smith.
There was a culture of not complaining or of raising concerns. BBC staff felt and were sometimes told that it was not in their best interests to pursue a complaint. The BBC seemed to regard the young audiences as necessary but a nuisance. One note of a management meeting describes the girls as unbalanced. There was no sense that they were young and in need of protection. So when complaints were made about Savile, by 2 teenage girls who were assaulted on Top of the Pops. Their complaints were not recorded or passed upwards to management as they should have been. Instead, they were brushed aside. I simply could not properly draw the inference from the fact that some people had heard rumours that senior managers had. I've explained already that the BBC was a hierarchical organisation and a deferential one. The fact that people heard rumours in the canteens does not mean that people in management circles knew. I cannot draw that inference, and
So it cost £6.5 million to prepare, and Dame Janet Smith, who, by the way, many of you will know this programme is produced and recorded here in Manchester. She spent 20 years of her career here. She was a litigator. She specialised in personal injury law, believe it or not. Dame Janet Smith. She concluded that the most senior staff at the BBC whom were aware of the abuse and what was going on were producers. She said that the BBC as an organisation could not be said to have known about the abuse, which lasted for decades. You know, I suppose if you've watched this programme before, or if you've listened to the radio show, you would expect now for Hayden and myself to engage in a fairly long-winded rant about it, but I'm not going to do it. Because it's depressing and because it's something that we've predicted through the programmes I make and the programme Hayden makes on liveleak.com, we've predicted that this is exactly the way it would go. We knew that the BBC as an organisation would be absolved of any blame, and that senior staff, senior managers at the company, at the corporation, would be cleared of any knowledge that this sort of thing was going on. It's a nonsense. Of course they knew what was going on. £6.5 million spent to find that 72 people were seriously abused at the BBC. We'll hear from one of the victims then. Let's hear from one of the victims who was obviously distressed and pretty disgusted at the findings of the report.
I think it's diabolical. That was just a waste of time. How could the BBC not have known? I've read a bit of the report and I think it's atrocious. How high do they have to be before they can actually say that they didn't know about it? As I said, if it had been one of their children, would they have still allowed it then? I was told originally, when I said I wasn't happy, when I was told what they was offering, I said no, I wanted to take it further. And I was told if I did take it any further that nobody would act for me. So I was told basically I had to just take what we was given, and that was it. The BBC didn't apologise.
You can't imagine what the victims must be going through. Again, I'm guessing that lawyers working for those victims probably prepared them for it. I'm guessing that some of the lawyers might have said, it's not going to be good, this. They're going to say that there was a culture of not reporting things. They're going to say there was a culture of rumours, and that rumours are rumours, and that people don't really want to be seen to be acting on rumours, and that there would have been a lot of egos at the BBC, a lot of people who didn't like a lot of people because, presenters not liking other presenters because they're successful, jealousy, all that sort of stuff. Rumours. But it's nonsense. I want to mention Liz Kershaw here. Liz is a terrific presenter. I'm not saying that because we're talking about her. She's a brilliant presenter. I've known of her and heard her on radio programmes and TV shows going back years. She's very famous. She comes from a famous broadcasting family, of course. On Sky News yesterday, and I couldn't get the clip, I couldn't get the bloody clip for the radio show last night either, but she spoke to Sky News Breakfast Stephen Dixon yesterday morning and said that it's wrong, it's untrue that senior management didn't know, because she spoke to senior management about some of the things that happened to her, including while she was presenting programmes, sitting there, doing links on a live radio show or programme. Some of her male colleagues would grab her and grope her and stick their hands in her shirt and do all sorts of inappropriate things to her while she was on the air. When she said this to a senior manager, not to a producer, the manager said, "Are you a lesbian? Do you not like it very much, Liz?" And she repeated that on BBC Radio 5 Live this morning. It's very interesting to hear the BBC cover this, because they have to be seen to, or at least try to be seen to, be given to report on this in an objective way. That was Liz Kershaw. You know, when I was thinking about what we would talk about and how we would talk about this report coming out, what keeps coming back to me time and time and time again is, number one, the idea the managers wouldn't know and that the senior bosses at the BBC wouldn't know over a period of decades. I don't think anybody in the world would agree that stands up as reasonable. I think most of us would say it's absolute nonsense. Of course they knew and turned a blind eye because Savile was a money-making machine, as was Stuart Hall and others. But I've been thinking a lot about the heir to the throne of England, the heir to the crown, Prince Charles. And I've been thinking a lot about his relationship with Jimmy Savile, which I'm not the first and I certainly won't be the last broadcaster or producer to ask the question why Prince Charles wasn't investigated by detectives around any number of the operations, whether U3 or others, operations and investigations into what Jimmy Savile was doing. There's a number of pictures here that Hayden is putting on the screen there. We're making a pretty blunt point here. This isn't sophisticated. The point we're making is these guys were very close friends. Hayden, we've not really ever gotten into this, you and I, but it flies in the face of reason that senior detectives wouldn't want to have, at the very least, an informal conversation with Prince Charles about his relationship with Savile.
Even if only to get some more information on his activities, whether there was any suspicions. Given the accusations against Savile, which, as we know, range from everything from child molestation through to necrophilia and satanic rituals, the sheer volume of them means that no matter how discreet a man could be, it would be impossible to keep that quiet. Now,
wouldn't it? And he had unprecedented access to the palace. Nobody before or since.
Oh no!
He basically had a key.
Yeah.
To the residence.
And they're constantly taking breaks together, as we saw in one of the pictures with
holidays. The guy was beloved by the Queen. Charles has said time and time again over the years this guy was his best friend.
Yeah.
Now, best friend's a very important relationship in your life.
I mean,
isn't it?
When I mentioned there the sheer level of things Savile's been accused of, I personally, there's a lot of elaboration there has to be. There's never been an offender in history with such a broad taste.
Yeah, I've said this before on the radio show, yeah.
But I do believe he abused young people, and that's enough. Yeah. We don't need the glass eyes and the corpses and all that malarkey and hail Satan and all this business.
Can I ask you a question on that?
Yeah.
And I really appreciate your input on this. If he was a procurer, does that maybe explain why he might have been into so much of the crazy stuff? If he was a procurer, because he was providing children for people with all different types of tastes.
It would make sense, wouldn't it, that you have a very famous and very popular and powerful man to procure children for your activities. I imagine.
Do you buy the BBC senior bosses not knowing what was going on?
No, of course not. It was rife throughout the organisation. Liz Kershaw's pointed out, various others have pointed out. We've seen evidence of Jimmy Savile touching girls on top of the pops.
Do you remember that picture? And how blatant. I mean, you absolutely know you're untouchable, don't you? If you're going to behave like that in such a public place.
And he's done all that admission stuff, like on Have I Got News for You or something like that. He's basically admitted it through his autobiographies and things of that nature. But the man was untouchable, like certain other celebrities actually are. They're just not touchable. They're too entrenched.
I would argue, Hayden, and we're going to talk about this more in a second, I would argue that his proximity to the royal family, and I'm going to get into this now, is possibly, or not possibly, is probably why the guy was untouchable. Maybe some of those BBC bosses were appalled, found it abhorrent what he was getting up to, but at the same time,
just following
because of
orders.
his connection, what can we do about it?
That's just being a good little Nazi, isn't it? Just follow orders. Do as you're told.
I want you to come back in a second. I'm going to mention this though first. Thanks for that. Look, we've mentioned this on shows over the years. This is a very difficult one. But look at Kevin Annett. Kevin Annett is a former priest who's written a lot about child abuse in Canada. And there has been a long-standing effort by people in British Columbia in Canada to raise awareness about accusations that were made about the Queen and Prince Philip, who visited that part of the world in 1964. Now, it is alleged, and there are records, there are at least records to show that the Queen and Prince Philip took some children out of a Catholic school in Kamloops in British Columbia, took them on a picnic. We know this happened. This is one of those stories that's either myth, it's either legend, or it's either fact. But there are a lot of people who have come forward over the years to say that some of the children who went on that picnic, taken out of that Catholic school in Kamloops in British Columbia, that some of those children never returned. Now, this is serious stuff, this. They've never been formally questioned by anybody about it. It's never been published. It's never been printed in what we would call a mainstream newspaper ever. But there are people who were alive then who continue to say that children went missing from that school who had been out on a picnic with Queen Elizabeth II, the current Queen of England, and Prince Philip. And there is enough anecdotal evidence there, and there is enough evidence of at least people who have no reason to make these claims, people who went to that particular school, by the way. And I can't tell you just how bad these Catholic schools were and what happened to children there, who are asking questions about this particular royal family. We don't do nonsense on this programme. We don't do accusations that can't be substantiated. And I'm not accusing the Queen or Prince Philip of anything. I am saying, though, that, you know, in a right and proper world, they would be questioned about the whereabouts of those children on the dates in question in 1964 in Kamloops, particularly with all the other evidence that suggests that the royal family have had really close relationships with people who have been seriously sick, monstrous paedophiles. It's as simple as that. Do what you want with that. On that, here's the story that made me sick to my stomach. And I don't want to be seen as a crusader. I'm not a crusader. You know, I do get annoyed with some of the independent media, how much they bang on about paedophiles and what should be done to paedophiles and all this sort of stuff. But this makes me sick. Hayden is going to bang up a story in the Telegraph, which was published late yesterday afternoon. I'm going to read from it. We're not using autocue here, so I'm going to read from the sheet. A privileged Eton College schoolboy who boasted to an undercover police officer of having hundreds of child abuse images and videos has been spared jail after a judge said prison would undo the counselling he has undergone. Andrew Picard was 17 when he was caught distributing graphic child sex images and films on Skype to an officer. The schoolboy's chat room account was traced to the prestigious school which is near Windsor in Berkshire, where he was arrested for sharing explicit material between January and February 2015. I'm going to continue reading the story now. A judge on Thursday said that some of the videos, which included abuse of babies and toddlers, were so appalling, frankly, I can't bring myself to talk about it. Cassie Oliver prosecuted him, said the undercover officer had entered as a teen, or had entered a teen chat room for those aged between 13 and 19 when he was contacted by a user called AP16MUK, standing for Andrew Picard. He described himself as a 16-year-old male from the UK. He messaged the undercover officer asking, "Do you want to see pics of boys and girls your age nude?" Boasting of having hundreds of videos, Picard added the officer on Skype. He added him as a friend on Skype and shared indecent images of a boy aged 10 and girls aged 8 and 14. He then asked the undercover officer for proof that he was 14, as he said, and not some old man. Picard later shared a video of his own face. The IP address was traced to Eton. Staff were able to identify him. The prosecutor said he was arrested from school on suspicion of distributing indecent photographs of children. 1 count of making indecent pictures of children and 8 counts of distributing indecent photographs or recordings of a child. and he avoided a prison sentence, having distributed images of the abuse of babies and toddlers that were so appalling, so violent in their nature. The judge said, I can't bring myself to talk about it, but the judge, Hayden Hewitt, neglected to hand him a custodial sentence. Now, Hayden, people like me, not you, people like me are labelled conspiracy theorists. We are labelled people who add 2 and 2 together all the time and make 5. Am I to believe that it is no coincidence whatsoever that this school was attended by David Cameron and George Osborne, and I could list the names off, and this guy was not handed a custodial sentence? That's a coincidence?
Even if you want to move away from the conspiracy accusations, let's take Bullingdon out of it, let's take all this out of it.
Yeah.
We can always leave class in it. They always look after their own. We see it time and time again. If this had been some obese 55-year-old off a council estate that never touched a kid in real life, but had pictures and was thereby complicit, there's no way that pictures are any better. They are complicit in harming those kids. Do you think he'd have got away with it? Do you think he'd have been told, oh, well, you're counselling, we don't want to damage your counselling? No, it would have been banged up, and rightly so. Rightly so. Sorry, I'm getting annoyed.
You know, I think there's a concerted effort by the establishment to try and normalise paedophilia. If he believes, the judge in his summing up said that it would destroy the young boy's life and that the counselling would be undone. To believe that guys like this can be counselled. We know this is nonsense. I urge our viewers to Google or to go onto YouTube and look for that terrific documentary made by Louis Theroux, where Theroux interviewed child sex offenders in various institutions in Los Angeles and elsewhere in America. There's no curing these people of this. What you need to do is bang them up for 10 years, and when they come out, you need to have constant surveillance on them. I want to mention Ben Devi. Hayden, have you got the Ben Devi petition? Thanks, buddy. Ben is an anti-fracking activist, and he's a social justice activist, and a notorious paedophile who had 3,000 images of the most vile abuses of children, was given a suspended sentence by a judge. Ben did a stupid thing. He got a camera, stuck it on his own face, and put a rant on YouTube of him absolutely going doolally, as we say in the Northwest here, about the lenient sentence handed to the disgusting paedophile. In the video, which is only seen by 14 people, Ben probably watched it 5 or 6 times himself and his friends, before he took it down without being asked. He took it down voluntarily. In the video, he said, I wish the guy got a good hiding, or I'd like to give the guy a good hiding. Yeah, violence is not good, and we shouldn't be talking about giving people hidings. However, he didn't ask anybody else to do it. He didn't seek to find out where the guy was living or invite anybody else to commit a crime by going around and beating the guy up. He was sickened by a judge handing out a suspended sentence to a guy who was peddling pictures of children being tortured. Ben Devi is in Walton Prison, Hayden, I think. He's in Walton Prison in Liverpool serving a 4-month sentence, while the guy who is an absolute clear and present danger to children everywhere walks free. We promoted the petition. It's now been bumped up to over 700, I think. It wasn't doing that well because people can't be arsed these days. People can't be bothered to support things that need supporting. But Ben Devi should not be in prison in Liverpool. Hayden, what's going on?
I mean, I've not seen the video.
Neither have I now.
I've not seen it.
I'm only reliably informed as to its content. Go on.
It was... If what we know is what was in that, and I would like to give him a good hiding, which in no way, even legally, equates to I am going to give this person a good hiding.
That's right.
Then effectively we're imprisoning people for thought crime and not paedophilia.
Should be an outrage. Do you know that his supporters, Hayden, have tried and tried and tried to get BBC regional media in the Northwest, have tried to get commercial media to at least mention the fact that a poor Egypt, and he's not an Egypt now in terms of, this guy's very clever, he's a very clever guy.
Someone that made a slightly naive choice.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, is in prison for challenging a judge's decision effectively to give a guy a suspended sentence for paedophilia.
They won't get near that. That's not good news to them. Good news to them is vigilante groups murdering paedophiles, because that's good for views.
That's right.
And that's all they want to hear about, really. They don't want to hear about someone put away. I'm very confused as to why a custodial sentence would be required.
It's outrageous.
Do
you know he was prosecuted under the Serious Crimes Act?
This is why I'm trying to think. Was there something else in that video we don't know about?
Do you know Victoria Lilly, marvellous Salford-based lady? Victoria saw the video and she's not a liar, to be fair to her. And I said, did he recommend that others go and see this guy? And she said no. He said he'd like to give the guy a good doing over.
I'm not sure that becomes a serious crime.
It isn't a serious crime. You know, the judge will probably say, well, he knows that other people as angry as him who might be closer to the whereabouts of the paedophile.
But at no point did he say a beating should be delivered.
At least that's what I understand, Hayden.
Did he just have a really terrible lawyer? Well.
You know, mate, we'll move on, will we? We'll move on. In a new low for British politics, and I put double question marks on my notes here because British politics couldn't get any lower, Jeremy Corbyn, the leader of the Labour Party and thus the leader of the opposition, was attacking the government during Prime Minister's question time even, over the junior doctors' row. Let me explain it briefly. And this is really subjective now. I get away with murder here. You know, but that's what you know, when you're presenting an opinion show, you can get away with murder. The junior doctors' row can be summed up as this: junior doctors, here's a new contract that makes you work much more hours for less pay, because we have doctored up a whole pile of bullshit that says more and more people are dying at the weekend, and that you're more likely to die at the weekend of a serious illness because there's not enough junior doctors on call. So we're going to get you to work more on sociable hours. We're going to take more money away from you. We're going to take the pay incentive away from you, and we're going to screw you to the wall. That is what the junior doctor's new contract is. It is, by the way, as subjective as it is. My opinion, it is. So while Corbyn was challenging Corbyn, that is, this happened. Have a look.
Will the chair of the Oxford anti-austerity campaign be writing another letter to himself, asking his local, on behalf of his constituents, for the health secretary to intervene and support his local NHS?
Ask my mother. Oh, I think I know what my mother would say. I think she'd look across the dispatch box and she'd say, put on a proper suit, do up your tie, and sing the national anthem.
Corbyn's comeback was good, you know. His comeback was his claim that his mother would want an NHS free at the point of entry for all, and an NHS that rewarded its young doctors, at least in terms of giving them, you know, fair pay for a fair day's work. But I'm a bastard though, Hayden. I'm a right bastard. I would have come back with, and I can't. I'm the worst mimic in the world. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker. As all the Tory idiots are all screaming. His mother has more pressing concerns than what I'm wearing today. Maybe the contents of a recent biography which highlighted her son's propensity for midnight trysts with decapitated bovines, for example, Mr. Speaker. But Corbyn is probably too classy, probably, to come back with that sort of comment.
I've got to say though, Richie, I'd have enjoyed it more if he'd gone internet on him and said, your mum, let me tell you about your mum.
Yeah.
And just got stuck it. I would have voted for him.
And his father. Not to mention Ian Cameron. Rest in peace, by the way, Ian
Absolutely.
Cameron. It's pathetic. It's absolutely pathetic. More and more Corbyn supporters, by the way, do agree with Hayden in terms of that they are perplexed as to some of the things that Corbyn doesn't bring up during these Prime Minister's question sessions, which happen every Wednesday at Westminster. Corbyn doesn't seem to want to go with questions about why the RAF isn't really doing anything in Syria, for example, why Britain is standing over, for example, the Turkish J.R. Ewing himself, Tayyip Erdogan, buying and trading in oil from ISIS. Doesn't seem to want to get into any of that. That's becoming more and more annoying for those who supported Corbyn so heavily. We're ruled by psychopaths, Hayden. We're ruled by psychopaths, nutters, wherever you look. The US Senate Armed Forces Committee has been talking this week to US General Curtis Scaparotti. Sounds like a sidekick from a TV detective show, Scaparotti Man, about what to do about Kim Jong-un in North Korea. Senator Lindsey Graham is bat-shit crazy. I mean, he really is a real loon. Somebody who gets off on the slaughter of his fellow man. Have a look at this. This is Graham speaking to Scaparotti.
Do you think he cares how his people live?
No, he does not.
Do you think if he had a missile that could reach the United States, he would actually use it against us?
I think that his stated purpose is to protect his regime, and if he thought his regime were challenged, he states that he would use WMD.
Is it in our national security interest to allow the North Koreans to develop missile technology that could hit the homeland?
No, sir.
Would you suggest we use military force if necessary to stop that?
If military force was necessary, yes, sir, but I think
That
we
should
have
be
some
on
other
the
options.
table, but that should be one of the options.
Oh, yes, sir.
Do you agree with that, Admiral?
I do.
So I just want the committee to understand that we're about to have to cross a road here eventually. Don't you think that in the coming few years we're going to have to make a decision about this? Does that make sense to you, Admiral?
It does, Senator, in my opinion.
Just trying to protect his regime, Senator Graham. It's not a great regime, but it's pretty well contained. But we can kill them if we want to, right? We can kill them. We can kill them. I mean, Jon Stewart at The Daily Show, nobody's ever impersonated this guy as well as him. A complete and utter lunatic. A warmongering madman. Enough is never enough for these sickos. Like, I know, I was looking into Lindsey Graham, and I discovered that he has a track record, and I'm not making any of this up, we don't tell you lies here, of voting against funding efforts for rescues aid. So the Hurricane Sandy stuff and all that, when it comes across his desk, their homes are gone. They're knee deep in cow dung and in river water. The house is gone. We need to send him a few million quid. No. His record is to vote no for relief efforts within his own country.
How can you be wasting money on saving people's lives and improving lives when you've got to bomb Korea? The guy's got his ducks in a row. He knows how this stuff goes.
There's a dark place heading, I think, or I hope, waiting for these people, mate. There's a dark place waiting for them, whether you believe in God
I think we're there already,
or not.
mate.
I hope so.
I think we're there already.
They're there already. We'll take a quick break. This is the penultimate Richie Allen television show for Series 2. Thanks for watching it. Back in a couple of minutes with plenty more, so stay where you are.
Attention small business owner, when is a box more than just a box? No! Oh no, that's just weird. A box is more than just a box when it can give you a couple of extra hours in bed, or at the very least some time to do something more fun and or productive than bookkeeping. Just bang all your paperwork in a box and we'll take care of the rest. Accounts Direct. Accountants on your side.
Welcome back to part 2 of the programme. Great to have your company. Thanks for watching the show. This is where I give the gratuitous plugs to our friends. I got to mention, first of all, liveleak.com. Got to mention LiveLeak. The LiveLeak show airs every Thursday at 10 p.m. GMT. It airs on liveleak.com. The link always shows up on the homepage. Terrific show. It's zany, it's funny, it's wonderful. You don't know what's going to happen in it. There's also a lot of very, very good commentary about geopolitics as well. Different opinions you won't hear maybe on my programmes, which is good. So that's LiveLeak. I want to give you a direction to davidicke.com/headlines. Now, David is on tour through 2016 and through 2017. Check him out. He'll be in Manchester next January. He's all over the world. His new book, Phantom Self, is on the shelves as well. You can buy it. There it is on davidicke.com. There's a review from it, for it by myself as well. I've read it twice now. A fantastic read. davidicke.com. There you go. My radio show airs Monday to Thursday, richieallen.co.uk for all the details. You can find me on Facebook and on Twitter as well. I'm at Richie Allen Show on Twitter. So the behaviour of the BBC in their coverage of the announcement that there will be a referendum this June on whether Britain should or shouldn't stay in the European Union. The BBC. I'll say it again. This is becoming a bit of a cliche, and I'm dangerously close to overkill on this, but I'm going to keep saying it because I mean it. The BBC is a propagandist or a propaganda wing of the establishment. It is a clear and present danger to your health, to your security and to your well-being. It really is. George Galloway. I agree with a lot of what Galloway allegedly stands for, because I really don't know if he does or he doesn't. But I would agree with a lot of it. I've never been fond of him or the way he conducts himself or the way he does business. That's fair enough. That's acceptable. The slings and arrows of politics. I don't like him. He attended a rally at Westminster a few days ago. Apparently, when he stood up to speak, 100 or so people left because they didn't like him. Again, that's fair. That's par for the course. But 1,500 didn't leave. Wanted to hear what he had to say about why Britain should leave the European Union. But the BBC invited him onto the daily politics programme with Joe Coburn. It's either presented by her or Andrew Neil, who's a contemptible little scumbag. I won't get into him here, even though I just did. So he was invited on to talk about the referendum. This is how it went.
George Galloway, it seems your unveiling wasn't quite the triumph that grassroots out would have hoped.
Not for the first time. You've misled me by asking me to come in and talk about the referendum, but instead wanting to talk about me.
I'm sure we haven't misled you. Well, hang on.
No,
I'm sure we haven't misled you.
No, I won't hang on. If you had told me that I was coming in to discuss me, I would have said there are much bigger issues that the British people are occupied by than 6 or however many vox pops you had.
But this is going on to the issue, as you say, of the referendum, because it's
let's
how
talk
powerful.
About the referendum.
All right, but let's
talk about the referendum.
Yes, but I want you to answer this. You want to defend, what you're doing here.
I don't want to defend me at all. You're not my judge. You're not fit to be my judge.
Well, thank you very much. All I'm trying to say is, are you going to be a benefit to this campaign if there are people that are going to walk out?
You asked me to come in to this studio.
Yes.
I didn't ask you. You told me you wanted to hear my views on the referendum
and I do.
on the European Union. So can we move on to that, please?
Well, are you happy to link up?
Galloway and Coburn's there. Galloway alleging that he had been invited on to give his reasons for wanting Britain to leave the European Union in the referendum, saying to Coburn that what they wanted to do was to muddy the waters. Well, you're an abrasive character. You're not going to do the leave Europe side any good, are you, George? You've had arguments with Farage. You've called him names. It doesn't get any better further along. Look at how this kind of winds up. Have another look.
Thing to do.
But are you worried that you might be turning off some people who would like to support grassroots?
But you asked me to come here, presumably because you thought I had something that some people might be interested to hear.
Yes, and we will get onto it, but it is important, isn't it? If you're trying to
I don't know when
push...
we'll get onto it. We're almost finished the interview.
How do you know? Might have you on here for another 10, 15 minutes.
I very much doubt that.
You're right. I'm not going to have you on for 10, 15 minutes. But if you're going to convince people of an argument, they've got to believe in the big players that are there.
Please stop this. You misled me into coming in here today, and every question you've asked has been about me. I'm campaigning amongst my 1 million followers on social media, on the radio, on the television, on platforms, on the streets, for Britain to leave for a series of important reasons to which you have...
I love the arrogance of I have 1 million followers on social media. He doesn't really, of course. What he's really implying is that he has 1 million supporters. He doesn't. He's reviled, is Galloway, in certain, I suppose, in certain areas, in certain aspects of society. Not necessarily because of what he says. Like I said, I agree with a lot of what Galloway says. I'm not sure he agrees with it, though. But more so because of the way he's conducted himself personally. Historically, his attacks on his opponents have been reprehensible. Some of the things he said about people, women in particular, have been absolutely disgraceful. Sometimes, for guys like him, issues like Palestine become a kind of a cause célèbre. Again, I'm not sure how sincere he is on these issues. But he's right about the BBC and the ambush journalism tactics of the BBC and the BBC's attempt to jump on the opponents of staying in the European Union and carry on like this when those who want to stay in the European Union are not treated in that way. I was going to play the Galloway Big Brother cat thing, but will we play it? Go on, yeah, play it, yeah. This is Galloway. This is one of the reasons why I could never like Galloway. Go on.
Now, would you like me to be the cat?
Yes, please. It's okay, it's okay. No, don't be frightened. Come on, good Kit Kat. Good cat. Look, shh. Good pussycat. Yes. More tickles on the back, yes.
That's brutal. It doesn't matter how many times you watch that. Look, he's right about the BBC. What difference does it make if 100 people pissed off out of a hole, 1,500 stayed to hear him? They had no intentions of asking him why he doesn't like Farage and why Farage, or excuse me, they had no intentions of asking him about why he wants to leave the European Union. They wanted to talk about, bust-ups in the Leave camp and why people don't get on and all that nonsense. Hayden, I'll give you 20 seconds on Galloway. You don't like him at all.
When you say
and
he's
you have
reviled
reasons. He's reviled.
He's reviled right here. I think he's an opportunistic, cynical, just generally a very horrible human being who also happens to be a tremendous orator.
Yeah, he's an outstanding public speaker.
He's untouchable in that
Absolutely,
regard.
Yeah.
He's so cynical. I mean, he's never left any constituency he's managed to gain election in any better off. In fact, usually quite the opposite, although I'm sure he'd argue the toss on that one.
Yeah.
He just is an absolutely reprehensible character, and as you know, I have absolutely no time for him.
No, I do. That's why I asked you.
Yeah, he's just
to get that
and this
point
latest thing, though, the worst thing that could happen to the Leave campaign is that George Galloway, Boris Johnson, and Ian Duncan Smith.
We're coming to that.
And Gove.
Absolutely, we're coming to that. Thanks for that. That segues neatly into the interesting theory that the most obnoxious Tories ever were selected to lead the Let's Leave the EU campaign to sicken the public into wanting to stay. We've got a picture, don't we? The Let's Leave pic. What a bevy of beauties here. The devil incarnate, Ian Duncan Smith, a man whom, if he had been born in the early 1910s, would have been working for Hitler in gassing disabled people to death. Oh, he would have been. This absolutely sickening scumbag, Ian Duncan Smith. And Preeti Patel, put it up again, Hayden, put it up again. Preeti Patel there on the end believes in cutting disability allowance while her own wages are going up. People who really need to be helped out by the benefit system. Michael Gove and Chris Grayling, they're like the monsters, aren't they? They're like the monsters. Sick, twisted whores, every one of them. I'm thinking of voting to stay in myself, Hayden.
That's what I said on the Lively show on my radio show. I was determined I'm voting to leave. If only because I think it'd be interesting. Might be funny. But as soon as Boris Johnson came out and said, waff, 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 and then Ian Duncan Smith said, yes, we must leave, I thought, ooh, I might have to vote.
It's a mind control game on the British people with these.
It really is, isn't it?
No doubt.
Look who wants us to leave. No.
Not the likes of them. We'll leave the European Union there for now. Just before we move on, gratuitous plug time. I interviewed a woman on the Richie Allen radio show yesterday called Christina England. She's written a book which was published in December. It was published, she wrote it with Lucia Tomljanovic. I'm the worst, never getting a job ever as a football commentator. Lucia Tomljanovic, PhD biochemist. Look, what she's not done, Christina, is invented a lot of nonsense about vaccinations. She's not claimed to be a doctor. She has published a book full of documents that she achieved through Freedom of Information requests, which show that this government and successive governments haven't cared about whether or not vaccinations could be harmful. They've passed them anyway. Now that is heinous, and it is a national scandal. And the book which he sent me yesterday, a PDF file of it, I've been leafing through it at a rate of knots, is truly, truly terrifying. So if you're I've never told people not to vaccinate. She actually went out of her way to say on the radio programme yesterday she would never tell people not to vaccinate. But this is the sort of stuff that the TV companies and the newspapers and the BBC and the government keep from you. You need to have all of this information before making an informed decision. You know what that is, dear viewer? That's responsible broadcasting. I will tell you nothing. I will not tell you what to do or anybody else, but I will tell you must have a look at this book and get a copy of it. It isn't expensive. Educate yourself. Right, thanks, Hayden. This absolute bullshit ceasefire, by the way, that's been proposed for Syria over the weekend that the US and Russia agreed on, that John Kerry said is great, it's brilliant, and the Russians are involved, it's fantastic. You know what I'm thinking? I've been thinking this all week long, and kudos to my friend Patrick Henningsen of 21stCenturyWire.com. Patrick's a real journalist. Check him out. This ceasefire is designed to give ISIS a chance to regroup. It must be. What else could it be about? Stop bombing them for a while we drop in loads of parcels from the UN, which might not all contain popcorn and candy floss. There might be actually weapons and God knows what else in there. It's the only conclusion you can draw, logically, I think. We've got a clip from RT America of Kerry talking about this, and then I'll move on. I'm not going to dwell too much on it. This is Kerry.
And we are back on the news. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry said there is a plan B for solving the Syrian conflict, which could involve a partitioning of the country. This could happen if the ceasefire due February 27th fails to hold. Gayana Chichikan has the story.
We are now at a stage where the U.S. and Russia are trying to get all parties of this conflict, except terrorists, of course, to abide by the terms of this cessation of hostilities plan. Secretary of State John Kerry was pressed by the Senate Foreign Relations Committee to say what will happen if the plan fails.
This can get a lot uglier, and Russia has to be sitting there evaluating that too. But it may be too late to keep it as a whole Syria if we...
Do you know what, Hayden? While the video was on, I just noticed, I didn't notice this yesterday, there were some lovely people at the back holding up these lovely placards saying no more dollars to Israel. Amongst those people are very, very good friends of mine. One of them being Medea Benjamin, who was one of the greatest women alive. She's an anti-war activist based in Washington, D.C. Lovely woman. She's often dragged screaming out of these Senate hearings. I don't know how she keeps getting back in. She's amazing. She is... I think her parents are Jewish, not that that matters really, but she's a very sane and rational talker about the Israeli problem, about the occupation. But wonderful woman, and I just noticed there that she's there again with the placards, no more dollars to Israel for the illegal occupation. Fair play to her. Hayden, stay with me for a minute. The fact that Kerry is now starting to talk about partitioning Syria, again, if we lived in a right and proper world, he would be arrested as a war criminal, wouldn't he?
We're just repeating the mistakes of the past, aren't we? We did that with the entire Middle East.
Let's partition Syria, because the Russians have really gotten in the way by killing the rebels.
Basically, there's nobody not being bombed in Syria at this point in time. Everybody's being bombed by somebody. We're bombing a bit of it. France is bombing a bit of it. America's bombing a considerable portion. Russia's just dropping shit everywhere. Never mind the BBC demonisation. We know how Russia does war. Ignore what the BBC are talking about. We know how Russia does war.
Yeah.
Russia does war by going, well, we have to kill everybody. That's how war actually works. You know?
Yeah, I mean, what DC is saying is that the Russians have just refused to acknowledge that there are some generally good guys there who want to bring about democracy and get rid of Assad. The Russians are saying, well, that's a load of utter bollocks. They're all terrorists. So wherever we think they are, as you said, hellfire and brimstone is coming down.
The Russians are saying,
and that's what they're doing.
We've got all these bombs. It's got a considerable cost to get them over there. We're dropping them.
We're dropping them.
Comrade. I guess because I'm doing the Russian.
And you know why I hate it? You know why I hate this? And I hate that it's happening. And I've never, ever, ever lent any support to any administration anywhere in the world. And I certainly wouldn't be giving my support to the Putin administration. On this particular issue, while people are dying, I still believe they're on the right side of it. The Assad government is the legitimate government of that country, and they must be supported against that uprising. Because it isn't an uprising, against that terrorism.
At the end of it, never mind who anyone supports, whatever else. It's just the people are getting this shit bummed.
Of course, mate. Absolutely right. It's horrendous.
Wrong. Everyone's wrong.
It's horrendous.
Just the whole thing.
And if the Russians pull out now and everybody else pulls out, what you have left then is maybe what the the dark actors wanted from the beginning, which is the lunatics running around with the yellow Toyotas killing whomever.
Just like Libya.
Just like Libya. Spot on. Donald Trump won Nevada this week ahead of Super Tuesday, this coming Tuesday. Super Tuesday! Where loads of states vote together. So it's an utter load of complete crap, the American election. It's madness. It is becoming, though, more and more likely that he will receive the nomination. So it's going to get a whole lot funnier. By the way, not that you need to be told this, but they don't work for us. And by they, I mean they everywhere around the world. You know, we've spoken on this programme about Hillary and Goldman Sachs. They're laughing in our faces. Look at Hillary being asked, will she release the transcripts of her speeches to Goldman Sachs? And I'm very shortly, thereafter, going to wrap up the programme. But you have to see this. The contempt with which these people hold us. Look at Hillary.
Earlier tonight, I asked Senator Sanders, will you give your transcripts of speeches? That's what you said. When the others give, then I'll give. Right. He said he doesn't have the bank speeches. If he can find any of the speeches that he did give for money, he will gladly give the transcripts up. So, will you agree to release these transcripts? They have become an issue.
Sure, if everybody does it, and that includes the Republicans, because we know they have made a lot of speeches. But look, what is this about? This is about whether I have the best plan to go after Wall Street, whether I have a record that already demonstrates my willingness to take on Wall Street and financial interests. And there's no question about that. I did it before the 2008 crash. I have done it since in this campaign. I have been absolutely clear. And a lot of people have said I have the most comprehensive, effective, comprehensive plan to make sure that Wall Street never wrecks Main Street again. I've also said I will use the tools that President Obama achieved in the Dodd-Frank regulations. Best, tightest regulations we've had in a long time. And they provide the opportunity to break up the banks if they pose systemic risks. And I've said that I would do that if that becomes the case.
All the more reason to remove this as an issue. You know everybody's not going to bring up their transcripts. There'll be 100 reasons why.
Why is there one standard for me and not for everybody else, Chris? I mean...
Imagine the absolute balls of it. I mean, just release the transcripts. You're a public servant. You work for the public. You will release the bastarding transcripts when you are asked to. And that's the end of it. Jesus Christ, when you think about it. It's $325,000 each for 3 speeches for Goldman Sachs. Speeches made that she said when she left the Secretary of State position before she had decided to run for president. It's right there in people's faces, the contempt with which they hold the public. That is the sad note we're going to wrap up this programme on this week. Hayden, thanks for your contribution to the show this week, my friend. Have a good one. Have a good weekend. We will be back with the final episode in Series 2 next Friday, which will be, I don't know what date it'll be. It'll be in March sometime anyway. And then we're going to take a 2 to 3 week, probably 3 week break before bringing you back bringing you the start of Season 3. Again, check out davidicke.com/headlines. Go to liveleak.com. Go to richieallen.co.uk. Do check out that book from Christina England, and do support the very unfortunate Ben Devi, who should not be in prison for criticising a judgment. Thanks for watching. See you next week. Bye for now.